I've seen a lot of other interior designers on YouTube who kind of just throw these generic furniture arranging diagrams at you and expect you to be able to do something with them without really showing you how to apply the logic that's involved in creating these diagrams to your own space. So that's what I'm going to try to do. Step 1. Assess your space and budget and how much you're trying to emotionally invest in this furniture. Is your room large or small? Does it have windows or fireplaces or pipes or any other architectural features that you want to either highlight or hide? How much money do you think you can realistically budget for this? Are you on an exclusively thrift stores and free Craigslist finds type of budget? Are you on more of an antiquing and vintage stores type of budget? Or are you more intuitive about it, discerning for each particular item or need if the cost is worth it? There's no inherently right or wrong way to go about this because this can look different for everyone, depending on where you're at in your life right now and what your relationship with money looks like. Are you ready to invest in forever pieces? Because it's okay if you're not. I know most interior designers here on YouTube tend to praise investment pieces or forever pieces above all else, and while I do solidly believe in culturally moving towards less cheaply and unethically made pieces of furniture that we switch out every year for newer, cheaply and unethically made pieces of furniture, and instead moving towards well-built pieces of furniture that are built to last, and also caring for them so that they actually do last. This can be a huge emotional burden to put on yourself to find the one and only couch you will ever want for your entire life, especially if you aren't really grounded yet in what you do and don't like. Not to mention that some larger amount of money is usually a huge factor in this, although it doesn't have to be. You don't need my permission, but in case you want it, it's okay to have something that just works for now, even though you know you won't have it for decades. Buy secondhand, take care of the things, and resell them when you're finished. Step 2. Decide which furniture you actually realistically want or need. Don't just automatically default to what society tells you you need. What are your actions on a daily basis? How do you move throughout your space as the day progresses? For example, if you want a cozy space to read or watch Netflix, do you actually need a huge sectional, or would a chair and a half work just as well? Are you actually going to use that dining room table, or is it just going to become so piled high with random shit that you physically can't sit at the table to eat? I definitely don't have any experience with this. I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. Do you actually like sleeping on a thick mattress on a frame up off of the ground? Or is there a chance you'd like sleeping in a hammock, or on a couch, or with a shiki-butan on top of a tatami mat better? Just remember, the one singular way that we've been culturally taught to do things is only one of many possible ways to do the thing. If there's anything you don't use, need, or find value in within the context of your lifestyle, now's the time to either pass it off to someone if it's in decent condition, or if it's just extra old and gross in a way that can't be cleaned, you have my permission to throw it away. And just a friendly reminder that most nonprofits, shelters, places of worship, and homeless or poor people probably don't actually want your old stuff just because it's free. Oftentimes it just places extra burden on them because now they have to figure out what to do with it. Nonprofits and shelters usually have a list of things they need on their website. Places of worship usually have an office that you can call or email, and you can just ask poor or homeless people if they actually want the thing before you assume that they do. And just a quick reminder for this section, wants and needs are a weird, subjective way of describing things, and this is only amplified if you have trauma or shame around the amount of things you have, the type of things you have, or just existing and taking up space in general. Just because you don't technically need a thing to literally only survive, and you could stay alive without it, doesn't inherently mean that it wouldn't bring a lot of value to your life. The concept of minimalism is great when it's reminding hyper-consumers to actually question if they need something before automatically swiping their credit card, but it's not helpful if you're just feeling shame around having too much stuff, especially if it's almost all stuff you use on a daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly basis, depending on the thing. If you love painting and you have a ton of paintbrushes, that's okay. It's as simple as this. Things are meant to add to our life, not take away from it. Step 3. Do you already have pieces of furniture that meet these needs? Or can something you have be changed slightly to fit these needs? Paint is by far the cheapest way to give furniture some new life, but it's also very real to not have enough space, time, or energy to paint because of the systems that force us into a constant state of lack. If you don't have something that works, is a loved one downsizing anything that might work? Or could you check out Craigslist and a few thrift stores before automatically heading to Target or IKEA? I get that, I feel that. And I know that takes more time, but it could be worth it in terms of how much money you'll not spend. This might be a stretch for a lot of people because it can definitely involve more access to tools and resources, but can you make your own furniture? It doesn't have to be as complicated as it feels. In searching for a sectional couch that would fit into our small living room, I started drawing up plans to use 2 twin bed frames and mattresses as the base of the couch. We didn't end up going with that because we ended up finding the perfect couch for just slightly more than it would have cost to build it ourselves, but it was a viable option. Step 4. Choose furniture that's proportional to the space. And what does this even mean? Well, you've probably heard of Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. You know, this thing. It's all about the perfect human proportions and whatnot, so maybe that's not the best example, since the idea of a perfect human is at the core of eugenics, which is rooted in racism, ableism, transphobia, classism, and really every type of superiority that exists. But we can use this idea of proportion. There's no one right or wrong way to choose furniture for a room or put furniture into a room, but you do need to be able to move around and use the space effectively, and ideally enjoy your time in the space, and these guidelines can help with that. Generally speaking, if you have a larger room, you need to put larger furniture in it, and if you have a smaller room, you need to put smaller furniture in it because larger furniture just won't fit. But, and this is a big but,
I like big butts and I cannot lie.
that doesn't mean you should completely fill a room with the smallest furniture you can find just because the room is small. I know this might sound contradictory at first, but when you have lots of small things, it just feels like lots of things, regardless of the actual size of the things. Whereas if you only have one big thing, it only feels like one thing, regardless of how much space it's taking up, which can really give your brain a lot more breathing room. Especially when it comes to living rooms, they can feel so cramped and crowded when you have more than like 2 or 3 pieces of furniture. If you have a small living room like me, especially if this arrangement fits your needs and you're trying to make your space feel a little less chaotic, I'd recommend one couch or sectional as your main piece of furniture, and nothing else. Like maybe a coffee table or a floor lamp to make that couch more functional. But no other moments, no accent chairs that you won't actually use, no random carts or side tables or art, no IKEA Kallax shelves that you had since college, right? Like, put it somewhere else. And if you do genuinely need to store a lot of things in the living room, get one large, closed storage piece that either blends into the walls or feels like a built-in, or actually build something in if you're allowed to screw into the walls and have some basic tools. Which segues beautifully into my next point of get a fucking measuring tape. When it comes to getting appropriately sized furniture, you need to know A, the dimensions of your space, B, the dimensions of your furniture, and C, a few basic spacing rules. Of these spacing rules, the most important is that you should ideally have at least a minimum of 3 feet for all walkways and passageways. You can go down to 2.5 feet if you're really squished for space, or maybe as little as 2 feet if you're in a van or school bus conversion or something, but 3 feet is a good rule of thumb. If your body takes up more or less space, you can adjust those numbers slightly, but as long as you can stick your elbows out while navigating through the space, you're probably good. The main reason this is important is because you don't deserve physical blockades preventing you from existing fully in your own home. Let me say that again. You don't deserve physical blockades preventing you from existing fully in your own home. Beyond that, most spacing is common sense. Making sure you leave enough space for doors and drawers to open, making sure you aren't squishing a piece of furniture into a space where it's touching walls or other pieces of furniture next to it, and possibly most importantly, making sure you don't put any furniture in front of doors or windows in case of a fire. If you have a rug or you're thinking of getting one, consider what the main function of the rug is for you in this moment. Is it to keep your feet warm? If so, you'll want to choose a fluffier rug, which is called mid to high pile because the pile is the length of the fiber. And the longer the fiber, the more air can get trapped in the rug, making it better insulation. Is it to look pretty? And what does pretty mean to you? For example, I love me a good vintage Turkish rug, but of course, after I had bought my first one, I discovered that I especially liked a border around the edge with a smaller repeating pattern in the middle, rather than one big medallion. Especially if you're investing some money into these, whatever that looks like for you, make sure you know what you like beforehand. Is it to tie all of the other colors in your room together? If so, go around your room and write down every single color, including the color of the floor, the ceiling, doors, doorknobs, window trim, light fixtures, etc. Then try to find a rug that fits with your aesthetic that has at least 3 of these colors in it, ideally 5 to 7. Is it to cover ugly linoleum flooring? Normally I'll tell people to get the biggest possible rug, leaving about 1 to 2 feet of space between the edge of the rug and the wall. But if you're trying to cover an ugly floor, I hereby give you permission to get a rug that basically touches your walls. I did this in my college dorm room with a giant old beige rug that I got for free from my cousin that was definitely a little gross from being in her dorm room. Then I put some smaller, cuter rugs on top of it to distract from the stains. I'm sure everyone who saw me trying to move this massive rug into my room thought I was a complete weirdo, but also literally everyone who came into my room said that it was super cozy, so. Is it to act as sound dampening because your downstairs neighbors are noisy, or you want to record some voiceovers for your YouTube channel, or you like to have loud sex, or you need a low sensory space? Similarly to keeping your feet warm, you'll want a thicker, plusher rug instead of a flat weave rug, because it'll trap all the sound waves and prevent them from bouncing all over the room on the flat surfaces. Is it to divide one room into separate spaces, or is it to make your space feel bigger or smaller? Odds are you'll probably want your room to feel bigger because that's what we value culturally right now. So you'll want a little bit of floor space showing around the edge of your rug, about 1 to 2 feet depending on the size of your room, but not much more than that because otherwise the room will feel much smaller than it actually is. For example, when I was living with a chosen family member a few years ago, they had moved into this apartment about a year before I joined them, so they already had furniture for the common spaces. The front door opened directly into the living room, which was arranged like this, with 2 armchairs angled inwards facing the couch, plus an extra bigger armchair off in one corner, directly in front of the door. When I first moved in, there was no rug, and it felt like the living room only included the couch and the 2 armchairs. The big armchair was there, but it just didn't really feel like part of the space. But then, someone I knew was getting rid of a rug that was big enough to extend all the way to include the space where you walk in from the front door, and also the bigger armchair. Once I put that rug down, the room instantly felt bigger, because now it felt like the armchair and the entryway were part of the same space. Step 5. Now that you have only the necessary furniture that's appropriately sized for your space, consider where you'll be spending most of your time and where you'll be looking if you're sighted. Do you have a window with a nice view, or a fireplace, or a favorite work of art? This might sound obvious, but position the piece of furniture so that it's facing the pretty thing. There's nothing particularly pretty in my bedroom or living room, but I got super lucky with a sunroom that gets the most divine winter sunlight, especially right at about 9:30 in the morning as of late. I've positioned an armchair that I got off Craigslist for $20 so that it's facing directly at all of the windows. And also my 7-foot tall tree that I found on Craigslist for free. And the sun dancing through the leaves is just the most magnificent thing I've ever seen in my entire life. This is only tangentially related, but it's similar to the last point. I've noticed that sinks are the only non-furniture place where I tend to pause and spend extra time, whether that's washing my hands or dishes or my face or whatever. If you have plants or if you've been wanting to get plants, I'd highly recommend putting some cute little plants next to your sink if you think they'll get enough light there. I find that it's a lot easier to keep track of how a plant is doing and notice any changes, and remember to water it if it's in a place where I'm already inherently actively doing things, and at the same time, I'm also pause and have a moment to notice my surroundings. Maybe this is just a neurodivergent thing, but I feel like when I'm sitting down on a piece of furniture, especially if I'm doing something other than work, my brain just automatically turns off and makes it extra hard to notice things around me and actually do anything about them, like checking in with the plants to see how they're doing and actually getting up to water them. Step 6. The last step is to physically put the furniture where you want and enjoy it. Also, I think this is important to note, if you've got back issues or chronic pain or a disability of any kind, please ask for help. There is no need to strain yourself unnecessarily if you can ask community for help, be it a chosen family member, neighbor, coworker, etc. Now, go rearrange your space. If you found this video helpful, please consider supporting my work on Patreon, which will help me focus on making these videos more regularly. Also, I